When Daniel first met Evelyn, he thought she was the most intimidating woman in England. She stood by the window of her old brick house in Surrey, wearing a navy cardigan and pearls, her silver hair twisted into an elegant bun. There was something royal about her, a quiet, commanding grace that made him straighten his posture every time she looked at him. She was 70, he was 30, and she was his wife's mother. The first time Daniel and his wife, Clara, visited Evelyn after their wedding, he noticed how spotless everything was. The air smelled of lavender and old books. Evelyn poured tea like a ceremony, her movements slow, deliberate, almost hypnotic. "So, Daniel," she said, her voice smooth as velvet, "what do you do for a living?" "I'm a landscape photographer," he replied. Her eyes, a sharp oceanic blue, flicked toward him. "A romantic profession. You must see beauty where others see nothing." He didn't know why that line stayed with him, but it did. Over the next few months, Clara and Daniel visited Evelyn often. Evelyn lived alone since her husband had passed away years ago. She kept herself busy with gardening, painting, and reading French novels. Daniel admired her quiet strength, the way she spoke with calm certainty, the way she filled a room without saying much. But something shifted one rainy afternoon. Clara had gone to visit a friend in London, and Daniel offered to check on Evelyn, who had recently twisted her ankle. When he arrived, she was sitting in the living room, leg propped up on a cushion, wrapped in a cream-colored blanket. "Oh, Daniel," she smiled faintly. "You didn't have to come all this way." "I wanted to make sure you're okay," he said. "Clara told me to keep an eye on you." She laughed softly. "Ah, Clara's always fussing. I'm not as fragile as I look." He stayed for tea. Rain drummed softly against the windows. Evelyn's dog, a small white terrier, curled up near the fire. The house felt warmer than usual, filled with the scent of Earl Grey and roses. At one point she tried to stand, wincing. Without thinking, Daniel reached for her hand. Her skin was soft, cool, like silk left in the shade. Their eyes met, and for a brief, strange second, neither of them moved. "Thank you," she murmured, pulling her hand away gently. That moment shouldn't have meant anything. But that night, as Daniel drove home, he couldn't stop replaying it. Her fingers against his, her perfume, the soft light in her living room. Over the next weeks, their conversations deepened. Daniel started dropping by more often, bringing groceries, helping her in the garden. They talked about everything: art, loneliness, aging, love. Evelyn was sharp and funny, with a wit that made him laugh more than anyone his age. "Do you ever feel," she said one evening, "that you were born in the wrong time?" "Every day," he admitted. She smiled. "Maybe that's why we understand each other." That sentence hung between them like smoke. Clara was busy with work, late nights at the design firm, business trips. Daniel didn't mean for it to happen, but he found himself craving those quiet afternoons with Evelyn. The way she looked at him, really looked, made him feel seen in a way that surprised him. Then came the evening that changed everything. It was early autumn. The garden was golden with fading roses. Daniel had been helping Evelyn carry boxes from the attic. When they finished, she poured them both a glass of wine, her late husband's favorite Merlot. "To your kindness," she said softly, raising her glass. He laughed. "To your strength." They sat in silence, the air heavy with unspoken things. Evelyn turned to him suddenly. "Daniel," she said, "may I tell you something strange?" "Of course." She hesitated, then smiled sadly. "You remind me of him. My husband. When he was young. The same curiosity in your eyes. The same way of listening." He didn't know what to say. He just nodded, his throat tight. "I hope that doesn't make you uncomfortable," she whispered. "It doesn't," he said quietly. "I'm honored, actually." Her gaze softened. "You're kind, Daniel. Too kind for this world." A single tear slipped down her cheek. Sudden, unexpected. Without thinking, Daniel reached out, brushing it away. His fingers lingered longer than they should have. For a heartbeat, the world went still. The tick of the old clock. the faint hum of the wind outside, the wine breathing in their glasses. Then Evelyn stepped back, shaking her head lightly. "Forgive me," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm being foolish." "You're not," Daniel said. But she turned away. "You should go. Before it gets dark." He hesitated, then nodded. "Good night, Evelyn." She didn't look at him as he left, but when he reached his car, he glanced back. Through the window, she stood by the curtain, watching him go. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He thought of her eyes, the sadness in her voice, the way her hand had trembled in his. Something in him had shifted, a door quietly opening to a place he didn't know existed. And though he didn't realize it yet, that moment was the beginning of everything that would come after. Daniel told himself he wouldn't go back. After that evening, he decided to give Evelyn space, to pretend nothing had happened. But a week later she called. "Daniel," her voice came softly through the phone. "The garden, it's overgrown again. I hate to ask, but could you spare a few hours this weekend?" He could have said no. He should have. But when Saturday came, he found himself standing once again at her front door, camera slung over his shoulder, heart pounding like he was 20 again. Evelyn greeted him with her usual grace, though there was something different in her eyes. A quiet warmth, an unspoken understanding that neither dared mention. She wore a light summer dress, pale blue, her silver hair loose for once. It startled him how beautiful she looked. "You didn't have to come," she said. "I wanted to," he answered simply. They spent the morning in the garden. The air smelled of rosemary and rain-soaked soil. Daniel trimmed the roses while Evelyn sat nearby, sketching the view in a small notebook. Every now and then she would glance up at him, her gaze lingering just a little too long. When he paused to drink water, she smiled. "You make it look effortless." He shrugged. "I just follow the light." Evelyn's lips curved faintly. "You always say that about everything." "The light. Maybe that's why people open up to you. You chase light in others." He didn't know how to answer. He only knew that her words felt dangerously close to truth. By afternoon, clouds rolled in. Thunder grumbled in the distance. Evelyn insisted he stay for lunch. "It's silly to drive in this weather," she said, and he agreed. Inside, the storm grew louder. Rain streaked down the windows like tears. They ate in the conservatory, the garden a blur of silver behind them. Evelyn poured them each a glass of wine. "I sometimes wonder," she said quietly, "if I've already lived all my best years." Daniel frowned. "Why would you think that?" "Because time is cruel," she said. "It takes little things first, your speed, your certainty, and then the bigger ones. People love purpose. Before you know it, you're a memory in someone else's story." He leaned forward. "You're not anyone's memory, Evelyn. You're still here." She laughed softly. "You say that as if you believe it." "I do." Her eyes met his. The air between them changed. Thicker, slower. The kind of silence that hummed with what neither dared to say. Then lightning flashed, and the room flickered with light. Evelyn gasped slightly. Daniel stood. "Maybe I should check the fuse box." But when he turned, she was already beside him. Close enough that he could smell her perfume, a faint trace of jasmine and something older like nostalgia. "Don't," she whispered. "Stay here a moment." He froze. Her hand, trembling slightly, brushed his sleeve. "I don't know what's happening," she said, voice unsteady. "I haven't felt alive like this in years. And it terrifies me." "Evelyn." His throat tightened. "We can't." "I know," she said, stepping back. "I know, Daniel. Her voice broke. "I just wanted to remember what it felt like to be seen." He didn't think. He reached out, his fingers grazing hers. Not a kiss, not yet, just a touch. Electricity shot through him. The storm roared outside, but inside it was utterly still. She looked up at him, eyes glistening. "You should go," she whispered again. But he didn't move. Instead, he lifted his hand slowly, brushing a strand of silver hair from her face. "You are seen," he said quietly. "More than you know." Her breath hitched, a sound that would haunt him later. But then she turned away, retreating to the safety of the kitchen. By the time the rain stopped, the air between them was different. Fragile, dangerous, charged. When Daniel finally left, Evelyn stood at the doorway, watching as the clouds broke apart. "Drive safely," she said. Her voice trembled on the word safely. He nodded. "I'll call you when I get home." "Don't," she said quickly, then smiled, almost apologetically. "Let's not make this harder." He didn't answer. He only looked at her one last time, the curve of her shoulders, the quiet dignity in her posture, and then he left. That night, he couldn't edit a single photograph. He sat at his desk, staring at the blank screen, remembering the storm, her hand, her voice. He knew this was dangerous, wrong even, but it felt like something had awakened inside him, something that had been asleep for years. Days passed. He avoided calling her. But one evening, as the sun dipped low, he found himself parked near her house again. He didn't even remember deciding to drive there. He just did. The gate creaked softly as he entered. The garden glowed gold in the twilight. Evelyn was sitting outside, reading. She looked up, surprised but not startled. "I thought you weren't coming back," she said. "I thought so too." She studied him for a long moment, then sighed. "You're making this impossible." "Maybe it already is," he said. For a while they said nothing. A robin hopped along the fence. The air smelled of mint and rain. Finally, Evelyn closed her book. "Would you like some tea?" she asked. He smiled. "Always." Inside, everything looked the same. Tidy, quiet, timeless. But something about the way she moved, the way her hand lingered on the teapot, made his chest ache. They sat opposite each other, steam curling between them. Evelyn looked at him, not as her daughter's husband, not even as a friend, but as a man. "You know this can't lead anywhere," she said softly. "I know. Then why are you here?" He met her gaze. "Because when I'm with you, everything feels real." Her breath caught. For a moment she said nothing. Then she reached across the table, her hand trembling slightly as it found his. "You shouldn't say things like that," she whispered. "I mean them," he said. Her fingers tightened around his. The world outside faded, the ticking clock, the creaking floor, even the sound of her dog snoring in the next room. There was only them, suspended in something fragile and forbidden. Then she let go. Slowly, deliberately. "You should go before I forget myself," she said. Rose. But at the door, she stopped him with a quiet, almost broken voice. "Daniel, do you ever think about what might have been if we'd met in another life?" He turned to her. "Every day." And then he left, again. But this time the ache in his chest was almost unbearable. As he drove away, he realized the truth he'd been trying to ignore. He was already in love with her. Evelyn tried to convince herself that what she felt for Daniel was nothing more than loneliness, a trick of age and memory. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw him standing in her garden, sunlight on his face, his voice soft and sincere. She hadn't expected this. Not at 70. Not again. For a week she didn't call. She read, cooked, cleaned, and told herself she was fine. But then one afternoon, she received a letter, a printed photograph in an envelope. No note, no explanation. It was her garden. The roses in bloom. The light slanting through the trees. Golden, tender, almost dreamlike. On the back, in Daniel's handwriting, were 3 words. "Thought you'd like this." Her heart fluttered like it hadn't in years. That evening she called him. "You're cruel," she said, trying to sound amused. He chuckled. "Why?" "Because you send beauty as punishment." There was silence on the line, the kind of silence where 2 people breathe the same rhythm, even miles apart. "Evelyn," he said finally, "can I see you?" She hesitated. "You know we shouldn't." "I know. But I want to." She should have said no. Instead she whispered, "Tomorrow." The next day, the sky was pale and heavy with the promise of rain. Daniel arrived early, heart hammering. Evelyn opened the door before he could knock. "You're early," she said softly. "I couldn't stay away." For a moment they just looked at each other. Then she stepped aside. "Come in." They sat in the living room. The fireplace was unlit, the air thick with everything unsaid. Daniel noticed her hands trembling slightly as she poured tea. "Do you ever regret loving someone?" she asked suddenly. He blinked. "Where did that come from?" "I've been thinking," she said. "About my husband. About Clara. About all the lines that life draws for us, and what happens when we cross them." Daniel leaned forward. "And what if crossing them is the only way to feel alive?" Her lips parted, but no words came. The rain started then, a soft, endless drizzle against the glass. Evelyn turned her face toward the sound. "Do you know," she said quietly, "what I miss most about youth? Not the body. Not even the looks. It's the permission to want." He stood, moved closer. "You still have that." She looked up at him, startled, afraid, longing all at once. "Daniel, please." But when he touched her hand, she didn't pull away. "I don't want to hurt anyone," she whispered. "You won't," he said. "Not if no one knows." Evelyn shook her head. "Secrets rot the soul." He smiled sadly. "Then let's just have this moment, the truth right now." She closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, something in her had surrendered. Daniel brushed his fingers along her cheek. Slow, reverent. The air between them felt electric, like the world itself was holding its breath. He could see every line on her face, every shadow of time, and somehow it made her even more beautiful. "You should hate me," she said, voice barely a whisper. "I couldn't," he murmured. "Not in 1,000 years." Then she reached for him. It wasn't a kiss, not yet. It was a collision of longing and restraint, of two lives stitched together by what they couldn't have. His forehead rested against hers, and she let out a breath that trembled like confession. When she finally spoke, her words were almost soundless. "Daniel, we're standing on the edge of something we can't undo." "I know," he said. "But tell me to stop, and I will." He didn't. The clock ticked. The rain fell harder. And then she stepped back, eyes glistening. "Please go," she said, her voice breaking. "Before I forget how to be good." He froze, heart splintering. But he saw the fear in her eyes. Not of him, but of herself, and he obeyed. Outside, the rain soaked his shirt, cold and heavy. He didn't look back. That night, Clara came home from her trip. She kissed Daniel on the cheek, tired and distracted. "Mum's invited us for dinner tomorrow," she said. Daniel's blood ran cold. "Tomorrow? She says she's missed us." He nodded, forcing a smile. "That's nice." But inside panic bloomed. The next evening they arrived at Evelyn's house. Daniel hadn't seen her since the rain. She greeted them with her usual grace. Calm, polite, distant. No trace of what had happened flickered on her face. "Daniel, you look pale," she said lightly. "Are you feeling all right?" He swallowed. "Just tired." Dinner was unbearable. Clara chatted about work. Evelyn listened, smiling in all the right places. Only once did her eyes meet Daniel's. A single glance, brief but searing, that said everything and nothing at once. Afterward, Clara went to wash dishes. Evelyn poured Daniel a small glass of brandy. "For the nerves," she said quietly. He accepted it. Their fingers brushed. "Evelyn," he started. "Don't," she whispered. "Not here." Clara's voice echoed from the kitchen. "Mum, where's the corkscrew?" Evelyn called back. "Top drawer, darling." Then, turning to Daniel, she said under her breath, "I need you to stay away for a while." His heart sank. "Is that what you really want?" She hesitated. "It's what we both need." He nodded slowly, but the pain in his chest was unbearable. "All right." When they left that night, Evelyn stood at the window again, the same place she'd been months ago when he first met her. But this time, her face was unreadable, the light behind her fading to shadow. Weeks passed. Daniel tried to move on. He buried himself in work, in photographs, in silence. But nothing filled the emptiness. Every image he captured felt hollow. Landscapes without soul, skies without warmth. One evening he received another envelope. No name, no address, just his own handwriting on the front, from an old roll of film he'd once given Evelyn. Inside was a photo of him. He was in the garden, camera in hand, the sunlight catching his hair. And below it, written in her graceful script, "Some lights never fade." Daniel stared at it for a long time. Then he packed his camera, his coat, his courage, and drove back to Surrey. The sky was darkening as he pulled up to the house. The windows glowed faintly. His hands trembled as he knocked. No answer. He tried again. Still nothing. Then faintly through the crack of the door came her voice. "Daniel, why did you come back?" He closed his eyes. "Because I can't unlove you." There was silence. Then the sound of a lock turning. The door opened. Evelyn stood there, eyes shining, tears on her cheeks. She whispered almost to herself, "Then God help us both." And she let him in. Evelyn had always believed that every love story came with a price. When Daniel stepped inside that night, she knew they were about to pay theirs. They didn't speak at first. The air between them felt fragile, filled with everything they'd said and everything they hadn't. Evelyn's eyes were swollen from crying. Daniel's face looked pale, worn, yet full of quiet determination. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered. "I know." "Then why did you?" He hesitated. "Because I can't go back to pretending." She turned away, her voice trembling. "Pretending is what keeps people safe, Daniel." He shook his head. "Safe isn't the same as alive." Outside, the rain began again. Gentle, constant, like the world itself was trying to wash them clean. Evelyn walked to the window, her reflection merging with the darkness beyond. "Do you think love is selfish?" she asked quietly. "Sometimes," he said. "But maybe it's only selfish when it hurts others." "And what if it already has?" Daniel moved closer but didn't touch her. "Then all we can do is make it mean something." She looked at him, really looked, and saw not just the man her daughter had married, but the soul of someone who had seen her fully, when she thought no one ever would again. "You've changed me," she said softly. He smiled sadly. "You've changed me first." They stood like that for a long moment, two people suspended between guilt and grace, between what was right and what was real. Finally, Evelyn stepped back. "Daniel, you have to leave. Tonight. For good." He froze. "You don't mean that." "I do." She took a shaky breath. "If you stay, we'll destroy more than ourselves. Clara deserves better than that." "So do you?" He shook his head. "You think I can just erase you? You'll learn to live without me," she said. "That's what love is sometimes, learning to live with the ache." A tear slipped down her cheek. Daniel reached to wipe it away, but she caught his wrist midair. "No," she said gently. "If you touch me now, I won't be able to let you go." He lowered his hand. "I'll go," he said finally, voice breaking. "But tell me this wasn't all a mistake." Evelyn closed her eyes. "It wasn't." He nodded once, slowly, then turned toward the door. When he opened it, the wind rushed in, cold and wet. He paused, looked back at her, the woman who had upended his world, and whispered, "Goodbye, Evelyn." She didn't answer. She only pressed a hand to her chest, as if to hold something from shattering inside. Then he was gone. In the weeks that followed, Evelyn lived quietly. She filled her days with small routines. Morning tea, letters she never sent, flowers she planted and didn't name. The house felt emptier now, though she tried not to notice. Clara visited often. "You seem tired, Mum," she'd say, concerned. "I'm fine, darling," Evelyn would reply with her soft smile. "Just getting old." But one evening as Clara was leaving, she turned suddenly. "I've been meaning to ask," she said. "Did you and Daniel argue about something? He's been distant lately." Evelyn's breath caught. "No, not that I know of." "Why?" Clara shrugged. "He just doesn't talk much anymore. He goes for long drives, takes photos he never shows anyone." Evelyn forced a smile. Artists are like that. Always chasing ghosts. Clara laughed lightly, kissed her mother's cheek, and left. When the door closed, Evelyn sank into the armchair, tears spilling freely for the first time in days. She didn't know if Daniel would ever forgive her for ending things, but she prayed he would at least understand. Months passed. Seasons changed. The roses bloomed again. Evelyn aged quietly into her solitude. She no longer looked for him on the street, but sometimes she thought she could feel him, in the way the wind moved through the garden, in the golden light that fell across her window in the evenings. One autumn morning a letter arrived. Her name written in Daniel's handwriting. Her hands shook as she opened it. Evelyn, I've left London. I'm taking a job in the north, near the sea. There's a cottage there. Small, quiet, full of light. Think you'd like it. I wanted to thank you. For everything. For reminding me that beauty doesn't fade, it just changes shape. You were right. Love doesn't need to last forever to be real. Sometimes it's enough to have existed at all. If I never see you again, know that I will always carry the light of your garden with me. D. Evelyn pressed the letter to her heart and closed her eyes. The ache inside her softened into something almost peaceful. Later that day, she went to the garden and planted a new rose bush, white, delicate, facing the morning sun. She whispered his name once, and the breeze carried it away. A year later, on a quiet afternoon, Clara came by with a new photo album. Daniel sent me some of his latest work, she said cheerfully. Look, Mum, this one's my favorite. Evelyn turned the page and froze. It was a photo of a coastline at dawn, cliffs bathed in gold, the sea calm and endless. And at the edge of the frame, just visible, a small white rosebush. Beautiful, isn't it? Clara said. Evelyn smiled, eyes glistening. Yes, she whispered. It is. She closed the album gently, as though afraid to disturb the image. Outside, the wind stirred the garden, brushing against the white roses she'd planted months ago. For a moment, she imagined Daniel by the sea, camera in hand, watching the same sky. And she smiled, not with regret but with gratitude. Because she knew now that some loves weren't meant to be lived. Some were meant to be remembered. That evening, as the sun dipped low, Evelyn sat by the window, the same window where Daniel had once seen her for the first time. The light was soft, golden like an old photograph. She lifted her cup of tea, whispering softly into the quiet room. Some lights never fade. Outside, the garden shimmered in the last light of day. And somewhere far away by the sea, a man lifted his camera and smiled.